My name is Paula Woodworth. I grew up in Littleton, Maine. Today, I'm going to tell a little story about what it was like to grow up on a dairy and potato farm in Littleton. Because I think most people today, if they didn't grow up on a farm, have no idea what that was like. And in the future, I don't think it will make much sense to people, the kind of things that we did as children. I'm going to kind of go through the seasons and talk about all the things that we did on the farm. And in my family, it was my family and my cousins that lived across the road. Our parents farmed together. There were a lot of girls. There were only two boys. And girls were expected to work on the farm just like everybody else. There was no slacking off just because you were a girl. So in the springtime, our major thing was planting potatoes. We had to pick rocks before we planted the potatoes. That was a lot of fun. A big truck, throwing big rocks up on the back of the truck. Planting, when I think about it now and all the environmental regulations that there are, I wonder how we ever survived it, because we would be out there, the wind would be blowing. In the spring, it was usually fairly windy. The first thing you would do is tear open big bags of fertilizer, and all the fertilizer would come flying out. You would dump these in a big hopper on the planter, and more powder and stuff would come out that you were all in hand. You wouldn't wear masks or gloves or anything. Then you had your potatoes. Then right down by your feet where you were sitting, there was a little row of nozzles that sprayed out some toxic chemical. I have no idea what it was. But the wind would be blowing and that would be spraying at you. And I sometimes wonder, how did we not all get sick? But that's just what everybody did. So planting took several weeks, and we would take turns going out and riding the planter, as we called it. Then when summer rolled around, it would be time for pulling mustard out of the potatoes that were growing. So we would go out in the fields and just walk up and down the rows and pull mustard. My family raised what we called early potatoes, which were cobblers. And we had a roadside stand, and in the summertime it was our job to work in the little roadside stand. So my dad would get us up in the morning, we would go out, he'd dig a row of potatoes. We had a little setup in our machine shed where we would put them on a rack. You'd pick out bad potatoes, you'd put them in bags, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 15, 50. We'd get them all loaded up, haul them out to the little stand, and then me and my cousins would spend our summer sitting out in the little stand reading our Trixie Belden books and selling potatoes. People would stop on, we were right on the main road on US 1, so we had a lot of traffic, so people would stop and buy potatoes. And of course, the other major summer event was haying, which was a thankless task. But the best part of haying was my dad and my uncle would hire a lot of the high school boys that lived in town to come and help with the haying. So we really didn't mind going out in the hayfield because you never knew who was going to be out there. But it was a lot of hot, heavy work lifting those big bales. We had long rectangular bales then, not the big round bales that you see most places now. So you had to pick them up, heave them up on the truck. When the truck was loaded, you had to bring them into the barn, take them back off, put them on this big long conveyor that went up into the hay mow. And that was our summer activity. Of course, fall brought potato harvest, which when you were the farmer's daughter or farmer's niece, you got to pick in the worst part of the field. My uncle would come to us and say, okay, now there's a real soddy spot up here. I want you to pick here, and on payday, I'll give you some extra money if you pick in the sod. Well, I'm not sure we ever saw that extra money, but potato harvest went on usually for 3 or 4 weeks. Here in Aroostook County, we would start school in August. We'd go to school for 3 weeks, and then we would get out of school for potato harvest. And it was up early in the morning, out in the field all day. One of my favorite memories is when it would rain, my uncle was the one that ran the digger. And it would start raining, and we would all start crying, and we'd say, it's raining, can't you please stop? And he'd say, it's not rain, it's just a heavy dew. So even to this day in my family, that's a big joke. When it's raining, if we're going to do something, we'll say, that's not rain, it's just a heavy dew. Don't worry about it. On our farm, we picked potatoes by hand, probably until I was in junior high. And when I look back on it now, and when I talk to my friends who were all in the same boat, we all grew up in the same kind of farm, when you look back at it now, you think, I can't believe we worked that hard. You know, it was a difficult life. You had a lot of work to do. But we all have fond memories of it. I just ran into some girls the other day that used to pick up for our family. And we said, you know, when we think back on it, we don't think about how hard it was or that we didn't like to do it. We remember the fun that we had with our friends picking. You know, if you got a break, if the harvester broke down, you got a little break and we would run around and play, and just all the fun things that we did. Plus you got to earn some money. So when I talk about all the things that we did, it seems like a hard life, but it really wasn't. You know, it was just life for all of us here. When I was probably late junior high or high school, we got a harvester, so we no longer picked by hand. We had the big mechanical harvester, which was a whole different kind of work because you didn't have to bend over and pick with basket and all that, but it was still kind of back-breaking labor. And then my father came up with the brilliant idea of hooking up lights on the harvester, so that not only did we just pick until 5 or 6 o'clock, but we could go in and have supper and go back out and work until it was dark. So that was not our favorite thing to do. So we got the potatoes in, and then in the winter, when all our friends were sleeping on Saturday, we got up on Saturday and went to the potato house to ship potatoes, because all the potatoes that you stored had to go out somehow. Today, I think a lot of the farmers now ship in bulk. They just load up big bulk bodies and send them out. But then we sold our potatoes to a broker who, it depended on where he was selling the potatoes as to how you packaged them. They might go in 100-pound bags. They might go in 10, 15, 20. So you never knew what you were going to be doing that particular day. But we went to the potato house. It was cold. We had another pollution spewing heater that gave us some heat for the day. We had a big long rack that the potatoes came down, and our job, those of us young girls, stood on little racks of some kind, I can't remember now, and as the potatoes came by, you picked out if there were rocks, if there were rotten potatoes, you kind of sized them, and then they went into the bags and got packaged up. So that was our winter activity. And then we also had cows. So in addition to these things that we did in the seasons, we also had to work in the barn. We had to go out and bring the cows in from the field, put them in, feed them, water them, bed them down, feed the calves. We had chickens. We had to gather eggs, weigh the eggs, clean the eggs, sort them into little boxes. It was an interesting life. But it was a good life, and like I said, most of my friends all grew up in the same situation, so it didn't seem unusual to us. That was life on the farm. That would have been in the 50s and 60s. I lived in the South for 39 years. My younger sister lived there. Her husband was in the Marine Corps, and she called me one day and said, Garrett's going to retire and we're going to move back home. Why don't you come with us? And I thought for a few minutes, and I said, I think I will. That's sort of how I made decisions, yeah. But we came back on the same day 3 years ago, back to the county. It took a while to adjust to being back because I was used to living in a larger city, having a lot more activities, cultural kind of stuff. So the first year I was back, it was kind of tough. But now I'm right back in my old county life. Feels good to be back.